Okay. Go ahead, Miriam. Miriam?
Ready, Tim? Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Gwinnett County Public Library in partnership with UGA Gwinnett Extension for our spring flowering bulbs for your garden workshop. My name is Mary Mayer, and I work for Gwinnett County Public Library's Adult Programming. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping rules. Please make sure to keep your mic muted. The button is located at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Tim will be doing Q&A at the end of the workshop. So if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. Now I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight's workshop. Tim Daly is the Horticulture and Environmental Agent at UGA Extension Gwinnett. He manages agricultural and natural resources programs in Gwinnett County by teaching educational programs in forestry, horticulture, landscape management, and water conservation. Tim manages over 150 master gardener volunteers in Gwinnett County and writes a weekly article for the Gwinnett Daily Post and a monthly column in the Gwinnett Citizen. Tim Daly is an Atlanta native and has a bachelor's in horticulture and a master's in entomology from the University of Georgia. Please welcome Tim Daly.
Okay, well, I'm glad to be here this evening, and we're going to have a topic's going to be spring flowering bulbs. And just everybody, just hold your questions to the end. You can type them in the chat box, okay? Well, we're blessed. There's many different flowering bulbs. There's spring flowering bulbs, and there's summer bulbs, and some that bloom in the fall. But we're going to focus on spring flowering bulbs because this is the time of the year to start planting them, which I have already done. Well, there are specialized storage organs, often referred to as bulbs, but they're not all bulbs. There are different types of storage. This is where plants store their energy for the following year. And we're going to talk. Bulb is a specialized underground organ consisting of a short, fleshy, usually vertical stem axis, bearing at the top a growing point or flower bud enclosed by a fleshy scale. So what you've got is a little mini image. You can see that embryonic flower forming in there. That's probably a hyacinth bulb. So that's essentially what an onion is, a bulb. You know, onions, garlic, that's the same thing. Corm is a swollen base of a stem axis enclosed by dry scale-like leaves. You can see there's the corm and the little cormals that are forming off the mother corm. And in a perfect example of corms are gladiolas and crocus bulbs, or combs. So remember, a corm is a swollen base of a stem. All right. Tuber is a modified stem structure that develops on an underground stem. That is an example of begonias and caladiums that you have during the summer months. Irish potatoes are that way. They're tubers. And some will produce, a few plants produce small aerial tubers known as tubercles. Mention begonias, certain tuberous begonias, caladiums, and a few other plants. Rhizome is a specialized stem structure in which the main stem of the plant grows horizontally at or just below the soil surface. They bear the same internal and external structures of a true stem. Examples include certain irises, cannas, lily of the valley, or rhizomes. And they also, time of the year to plant irises. Although there are multiple types of irises, they're not all rhizomes. We'll get into that later. So remember, we got our fall flowering, late summer, early fall, which are like the spider lilies and the fall crocus, autumn crocus. Winter flowering bulbs or tender bulbs, these are actually forced to bloom out of season indoors. Then you get your spring flower. Those are like if you have a way of forcing flowers. If you start them indoors and keep them in the refrigerator for a certain period of time. Spring flowering bulbs consist largely of the so-called Dulce bulbs. Planted in the fall, they bloom in the following spring. Most spring flowering bulbs are hardy in Georgia. That's like your daffodils, hyacinths, tulips, and so forth. Summer flowering bulbs include hardy to tender bulbs that flower in the summer. Some will continually flower like canna lilies are the ones. Another example would be gladiolus, would be a summer flowering bulb. Site selection is important. They need light shade to full sunshine, at least 6 to 10 hours a day. Although they can most of them can be planted in full sun all day long, is what the best is. In open areas, they need to have bed preparation. They need to have well-drained soil, because wet soils that stay wet, they rot. Plant them at the appropriate depth, which will tell you on the package that you plant them, how deep you should plant the bulbs, and space them apart accordingly. And make sure that they're spaced apart and covered with the appropriate amount of soil. Put some 10-10-10 fertilizer on them, kind of mix that in with them, and wait. Right now, as I said, is a good time to put them out, because what they need is they have these type of plants have to be underground, and not only under, they need the cold temperatures to help initiate the flowering process the following spring. Now, some you got to be careful about where you buy bulbs. Buy from a reputable dealer. Avoid bulbs that are soft or look like molded or discolored. They should be firm and have unblemished skin. The direct correlation between the quality of the bulb and quality of the flower produced. Bargain bulbs are often no bargain at all. If you bring flowering bulbs that are purchased this spring are simply leftovers from the previous fall and are virtually worthless. So that's, just remember, now's the time. A lot of the stores have them, are being sold right now, and now's the time you can go ahead and start putting them out. Spacing, again, this right here is showing you how deep to plant them, but then always go by what it says on the planting package, spacing them appropriately so they're not growing into each other. Planting and spacing, not only how much space each plant needs, but how frequently it will be dug and divided. Also consider landscape effect. Avoid spotty arrangement. Sometimes suggested that bulbs be broadcasted over the area to be planted in order to achieve a naturalistic look. So there are many different ways. Care and maintenance, mulches or ground covers sometimes are necessary. It's in much colder climates, although down here most of spring flowering bulbs will be fine. But it also helps reduce water loss and keeps weeds at a minimum. Also prevents mud spattering from heavy rains. Something of like an inch or two of pine bark, pine straw, or cypress mulch. Care and maintenance. It's best not to cut or remove foliage until it dies naturally. Most spring flowering bulbs produce foliage in the fall, early winter that dies by the late spring or summer. Summer flowering bulbs produce their foliage in the spring and into the summer, and often stays until the cold weather kills it in the fall. Normal rainfall usually provides enough moisture for spring flowering bulbs, but not for summer flowering bulbs. So summer flowering bulbs, like the cannas, you got to give some extra water to. During dry weather, provide supplemental irrigation at weekly intervals, but we're not having much trouble with dry weather lately with all this rain. But important to have that soil well drained to keep the plants, keep the bulbs moist. I mean, so they're not rotting. They're moist, but they're not going to rot. Dividing and propagating. This is a good time of the year to do it. In time, they become overcrowded, and you have to dig them up and pull them apart. The bulbs, the length of time depends largely on the bulb's ability to produce bulblets, or some may remain undisturbed for many years, while others require dividing every 2 years. Wait until the foliage is turned brown and is withers. Be cautious when digging so not to damage the bulbs. They can be gently pulled apart. Bulbs and corms, tubers, and rhizomes may be cut into pieces, with each division having one eye. Tuberous roots can be split apart. Some tuberous roots, like dahlias, often require that a small piece of crown tissue remain and wash off the soil that clings to the bulbs. Storing bulbs. Bulbs can be replanted immediately or stored for later plantings in a dry place away from sunlight, 60 to 65 degrees. Be sure to provide good air circulation. So that's just the basic about bulbs. We're going to go into the fun part and discuss about the various different types of spring flowering bulbs we can put out. Glory of the Snow, Chianodoxa or Chianodoxa. Flowers are small, thus masses are usually necessary for a good display. Excellent bulb for naturalizing and will increase by bulblets self-seeding. Hardy bulb. This bulb right here, I mean, you can grow in northern climates, sub-zero temperatures, don't bother it. Very hardy. Of course, we don't get sub-zero temperatures around here, at least, but then again, with the way the weather's been lately, anything's possible. Crocus, many different varieties or colors available. Large spring flowering varieties are valued for their time of bloom. They usually one of the early ones to bloom. This right here looks like a saffron crocus. You see those little flower parts? That's the saffron. But there are even people trying to start that, but it takes a lot of crocus to produce saffron. But many different types out there, and they're one of the first to bloom in the spring. Snowdrops or galanthus, also very early to bloom. Drooping white flowers with a green splotch around the inner segments. They grow well under deciduous trees, are good for naturalizing and random planting. They're very hardy. They're called snowdrops because often in more northern climates, they come up and bloom in the snow. Hyacinths. Few flowers can boast the extensive color range and fragrance of hyacinths. They're a hardy bulb, planted in the fall at a depth of 4 to 5 inches, to 4 inches, and at least 5 inches apart. And they produce very fragrant flowers. They're great for containers, and they're very attractive. I'm going to put some in my yard. Now, irises, there's the rhizomatous irises, like the bearded irises. There's Siberian irises and Japanese irises. The cultural requirement differences, there's a little more than what I can discuss here, but some of these irises, like the Siberian irises, can grow in water. There's also the Dutch irises, which are bulbs. Common grape hyacinth, teeny purple flower clusters resembling clusters of grapes, easy to grow, naturalizes quickly, frequently interplanted with other spring bulbs. There's also a white variety available. Several blue and lavender varieties. Planted at the depth of 3 inches and 3 inches deep and 3 inches apart. Narcissus, daffodils, jonquils, there's a large numbers of varieties that can be grown, many different colors, many different shapes. They're winter hardy. I often get people calling me saying, well, they see the flower, they see the bulbs germinating in the dead of winter, and they're worried about freeze damage. Well, these plants are pretty cold hardy. In fact, in more northern climates, they'll bloom, they'll start blooming, and the middle in snow. You can see the jonquils, and I've seen it around here, like some later season snows. We don't have much of them, but in years past when that's happened, they're out blooming and just having a good time. These are bluebells. There's actually a lavender type scilla or Siberian squill, scilla. Bright blue flowers, excellent for naturalizing, especially in wooded areas. Several varieties are available, including ones with white flowers and lavender flowers, hardy bulb, but you'll need to kind of divide it every couple of years because they grow and get kind of extensive and they crowd each other out. Tulips, there are many different tulips and cultivars that exist. They're probably some of those famous spring flowering bulbs. Um, Virtually all colors are representative. They call this like Post Department. I believe that's got under another name now. They would have tulips for their signature. They have that, and Post used to have their own internal landscape company, which they don't anymore. And they're the ones that really started a lot of these flower plantings all year long. And tulips were one of the they were famous for. Also, we all think of the Netherlands, where many of the bulbs are grown. The only problem with tulips around here is that they really are sort of like an annual. You plant them, they grow one year, and then you just got to dig them up and throw them away because they don't really come back. And sometimes they might, but the following year you'll need to put new bulbs in. Uh, I always say it's best to keep your tulips. I have always had a little trouble with germination, or I should say, using germination, coming up out of the ground. It's not really germinating, but as they come up in the spring, and sometimes I get uneven, some don't come up very well. So I put them in the refrigerator about a month before I plant them, and then put them out. And I'm gonna see how that works. I'm wait till a little later this month to put them out. But they're like all the other bulbs; they need to be planted. Uh, when they're planted, they need to be in loose, well-drained soil. Put some 10-10-10 fertilizer in there, cover them up, and put a little pine straw on top of them, or pine bark mulch. That's what I'm doing. See, what I've done, and I got that idea from commercial landscaping, is that I plant a bed of pansies. And that's like I already got those flowers out. And then later this month, I'm going to stick the tulips down in the pansies. So see how that works. So, you can plant tulips in with your ornamental flower beds that are already existing. And just sort of like on a different topic, you got your winter flowering pansies or annuals, but there's also snapdragons that you can put out this year as annuals. Dusty Miller, the one that has that gray dusty looking leaf, can put out. There's also ornamental cabbages, kale, mustards, and so forth that can be put out. And it's great, you can mix these bulbs amongst them. Spring starflower, Star of Bethlehem it's sometimes called, produces abundant bluish-white flowers. It is excellent and multiplies rapidly, and it will. I mean, this might get out into your lawn. They're quite prolific, but they bloom and then they die back. So they're really not that bad. They're very beautiful. They look like a little carpet of snow in some areas where you get large numbers of them. Zephyrantes, Adamasco lily, sometimes called a rain lily, is often seen along roadsides of Georgia, frequent along drainage ditches and wet ditches. It gets its name because flowers often appear following a soaking rain. And there's a hardy bulb, great one to have. consider planting them. I think I'm gonna try to get some, but you know, I've just covered some of the basic ones here. There's other ones out there as well that you can look at that are pretty good. Right here, I'm showing you, these are tulips down at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens. And of course, you can get a membership, or one-day trips like $20, and a membership's like $80, $90 a year. Go as many times. You can get a parking pass for get parking loaded on it. They also, the only thing is right now, well, they don't have tulips bloom. We're going to wait till March and April for that. But also with the pandemic, there you have to make a schedule a time to go there and get tickets. So, I highly recommend that. Here's a picture at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens. Nice little feature, water feature. Those of you with some of you master gardeners are on here. We would have our final day at the Botanical Gardens. We have the exam and luncheon, and then we actually went over to Gwinnett Tech for a few years, and then we come back to the Atlanta Botanical Gardens. Of course, right now, due to the pandemic, we can't do that. But you know, if those of you may be interested in our Master Gardener class, we used to have it in the middle of the winter, but we put it off till the fall of next year. Fall of 2021, and I say tentatively. Not certain if that will happen or not. Hopefully, we'll get past all this. There's a picture. This is somewhere in Europe. I'm using this. I might start using this as a screensaver. So that's pretty much at the end of my lecture, and I will take questions. Yeah, let me see. Type in your questions, and I shall take them. Do we need to wait till the soil is 55 degrees to plant daffodils? Well, I would say it needs to be cool. It's best for the soil to be cool. So yeah, under 60 degrees is the best. It's getting cold. I see somebody says, I agree, and Atlanta Botanical membership is well worth it. Excellent in all seasons. I have a membership to it, and I have not used it. So I need to make a point to go down there and use it. Any other questions? Type any questions in there. How do we learn more about Master Garden? Well, wait a minute, Harry. All right, good. I'm getting some questions in here now. Any of the bulbs, plants, deer resistant? Well, most of them, if the deer are hungry enough, they'll eat them, but they usually go for other things. Ranunculus, that's, if my memory's not that familiar with it, that's a summer flower. You plant them in the spring. How do we learn more about master gardening? How do we learn? Well, send me an email. I got my email address here. Send me an email and I'll give you all the, hold on.